Are you curious about what exactly is going on with our lady detectives in Botswana, and you just want a nice little dose of humor, wisdom, and just a comfy mystery? Then today's book just might be for you. Today I'll be covering The Handsome Man's Deluxe Cafe by Alexander McCall Smith. Welcome to Spencer Reads Everything. I'm your host, Spencer Duncan, and today we are taking a look at the 15th book in the #1 Ladies Detective Agency. And we, of course, are going to be following Precious Ramotswe, or as I like to say, just Precious, because I can't say her last name, and her trusty team, which is going to include her husband, Mr. JLB Matakoni, her good friend and former secretary, Grace Makutsi, who is actually, at this point, much more than just an assistant, and we'll see how that plays out. And then, of course, there's all sorts of other characters. In this book, this time a mysterious case lands on Precious's desk. A woman with no memory or identity needs help uncovering her past. Alongside this, we get to see Grace embark on her entrepreneurial journey by opening the Handsome Man's Deluxe Cafe, which promises to cater to Gaborone fashionable elite. And as you might expect, things don't go smoothly in that case. And as planned, running a restaurant comes with its own set of challenges: unreliable staff, demanding customers, and the constant threat of bad reviews. And as usual, we are going to get an appearance from one of Grace's arch nemesis, Violet Sopoto. She has become increasingly relevant in the last several books, and we have seen her try not only to do things that are not particularly moral or kind, but we see her specifically taking on many of the things that Grace is trying. And so this rivalry is becoming all the more evident and all the more of a true rivalry and not just a clash of moralities. As usual, there is more going on than just the cases that they are tackling. There are just their day-to-day lives. And while you have this woman whose case is going to take center stage, that you're also going to, feature some smaller character-driven subplots that really help to enrich the tapestry of the whole series. For example, Precious is going to reflect on the moral dilemmas that her clients face. She is often acting as more than just an investigator. She is also a counselor and a mediator rather than a traditional detective. The agency also tackles everyday mysteries that are going to help showcase that, the author just has a signature blend of humor and warmth. The story is going to delve into, of course, the strength of community, as characters rely on one another to navigate their challenges, and of course Precious's introspection about life and relationships and a changing Botswana and its society are all going to be major parts of this narrative. Or I would say with this installment, and particularly as you can tell by the title, this is one of the books that puts a little more focus on Grace than on Precious, although there's certainly plenty still coming from Precious. Grace in particular is trying to set up not only a new restaurant, but she's just trying to expand ways that her and her husband can make money. He is incredibly supportive, and she is very excited that she has been successful at getting things up and going. And then, as I've already said, there are going to be some issues with trying to make it all work. Don't forget that in the previous book, she had her child, and so there is certainly an element of balancing work and home life, although you will quickly discover that it is Grace, and she is pretty driven. So we're going to find her finding ways to involve her son, have him with her at times, but by and large to just do things that she thinks is going to be helpful for her and her family, and to continue pursuing these business opportunities. Also, another thing that you'll see from Grace that came up in the previous book becomes even more pronounced in this book, I think, is her ongoing relationship with shoes, in particular, the fact that she talks to them. That is interesting. This book, this series doesn't really have anything, I would say, too metaphysical or particularly spiritual or anything along those lines. There is certainly discussions of faith. Grace and Precious, I believe, are both pretty religious. Precious in particular, we know to be religious. She goes to church. There is frequently references of clergy that she knows and is on good terms with. But I would say that, very rarely do they actually mention any kind of like miracles or anything like that. But Grace's relationship with her shoes is increasingly distinct, and certainly one of the elements of the novels that I would say is starting to just give it a little more, I don't want to call it supernatural, but definitely a little, it just makes it a little different. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but that is something that you're starting to see form. I don't want to make it sound like it's a huge part. It's usually just a few paragraphs here and there where you find her talking to her shoes and the shoes giving her advice and things that she shouldn't do, and you'll continue to see this throughout the books. So who would I say this is for? Well, as usual, I'd say this is another great installment in the series. I would also say that this is one of the books where you don't have quite as much major events. You certainly have their personal lives become pretty pronounced in this, especially with the efforts at trying to open up the cafe. But I wouldn't say you have any of the major events that we've had leading up to this, such as getting married, having a child, setting up new businesses. Those, I think, have been bigger elements in terms of knowing the makeup of the community and the interaction between all the various main characters. But in this case, despite the big event of starting a cafe, this isn't necessarily one of those books where you are missing out on key elements of character development, but you certainly do have some interesting mysteries to explore, and you are getting the opportunity to spend some time with the characters, which I think is always very valuable, and one of the reasons why I suggest these books. So I would recommend this for anyone that has enjoyed this series up to this point. I think this is another great installation. I don't think that it's one of the most important ones in the series as a whole, but I don't know how I would rank these. I don't know if I would. That might be a fool's errand. Who would I not recommend this for? Well, as always, if you just don't think that you're going to be interested in this long series, then this book's not for you, especially since you probably need to go back to the beginning to really appreciate this book. I do think that the mysteries in these books can be read episodically, that you don't necessarily have to have had all the other information in all the previous books, but I don't think you would appreciate all the other elements of the book. And I think for some people that would be a big disappointment or a drawback. For me, I actually think it's one of the things that makes these especially appealing in their structure, and one of the reasons I really enjoy these books. But that's just me. Of course, let me know what you think. If you have thoughts on this book in particular, please let me know. I would love to know what people think about these books individually. If they do have preferences or which ones they do think are the best ones, please let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on those notifications, and until next time, keep those pages turning.